So today we're going to study about scalars and vectors. A scalar is a physical quantity that has magnitude but no direction, whereas vectors are the quantities that have both magnitude and direction. So, the word vector comes from the Latin word for carrier or conveyor. In biology and medicine, the term is used to describe organisms such as mosquitoes, fleas, and ticks that carry or spread disease. But in physics, this term is used to visually represent quantities that have secondary characteristics, such as they possess direction as well as magnitude. A scalar is a physical quantity that has magnitude but no direction, whereas a vector is a physical quantity that has both magnitude and direction. Scalars include distance, speed, mass, time, energy, density, volume, temperature, distance, and work. Whereas vectors include force, velocity, displacement, acceleration, momentum, rate, velocity of light, gravitational field, and current. So what's the difference between scalar and vector? A scalar quantity has only magnitude, whereas vector quantities have magnitude as well as direction. The scalar quantity is specified by a number and a unit, whereas a vector quantity is also specified by a number along with the direction and unit. A scalar quantity is represented by a quantity symbol, whereas vector quantity is represented by a quantity symbol in bold or with an arrow sign above. And there are examples of scalar quantities include temperature, speed, whereas vector quantities include acceleration, velocity, etc. Why do we consider velocity instead of speed in order to decide which player reaches the ball first? This is because direction is more important, because a player may run very fast but not towards the ball. So that's why we consider velocity instead of speed, because velocity is a vector quantity and speed is a scalar quantity. The velocity is vector quantity. It will allow us to denote the direction also. The basic characteristics of vectors include: vectors indicate direction but scalars do not. Vectors are represented by bold-faced symbols. A resultant vector represents the sum of two or more vectors. Vectors can be added graphically. So this is the graphical method of vector addition. So let's suppose a student walks from his house to his friend's house. The student's resultant displacement can be found by using a ruler and a protractor. The word vector is also used by airplane pilots and navigators. In this context, a vector is the particular path which is followed or to be followed, given as a compass heading. How do we represent vectors? Vectors are drawn as arrows. The arrow has both a magnitude, how long it is, and a direction, the direction in which it points. We can represent vectors by using an arrow or using a bold-faced letter. So this is the representation of a vector. The length of the vector will represent the magnitude, whereas the arrowhead will represent the direction. The arrow has a head and a tail. A scalar quantity has only magnitude, such as speed, volume, time, mass, and vector quantities have both magnitude, direction, such as friction, weight, velocity. Vectors are denoted by arrows that represent vector quantity. Both magnitude and direction are shown by arrows. The length of the arrow represents the magnitude of the measurement. The direction of the arrow within a coordinate system represents the direction of the vector. Let's suppose Most vector directions are references to a particular direction, for example 0 degree, or we say towards west, or negative x-axis of a graph. So here are some of the physical quantities such as scalar and vector quantities. Distance, speed, mass, energy, density, length, area, volume, time, temperature, work, these all are scalar quantities, whereas displacement, velocity, weight, acceleration, impulse, pressure, momentum, drag force, gravity, these all are vector quantities because they have both magnitude as well as direction. So let's solve some of the important questions, such as which of the following quantities are scalar and which are vectors. You have to distinguish between them. The first one is a vector. The number of passengers on a plane is a scalar quantity. Duration of flight is a scalar quantity. The displacement of the flight is a vector, and the amount of fuel required for the flight is a scalar quantity. And find out the scalar and vector quantities from the given list for speed. Scalar quantities, vector quantities. Scalar quantities include speed and temperature, whereas vector quantities include force, electric field, angular momentum, magnetic moment, linear momentum, and average velocity. These all are vector quantities. The next question is, a roller coaster moves 85 meters horizontally, then travels 45 meters at an angle of 30 degrees above the horizontal. What's the displacement from the starting point? Use graphical techniques. So by using graphical techniques, we can say that 126 meters above the horizontal. This is the displacement of the roller coaster. So let's solve the next question. The answer is 204 km at 75 degrees north of east. The next question. The water used, this question is about critical thinking. The water used in many fountains is recycled. For instance, a single water particle in a fountain travels through an 85-meter system and then returns to the same point. What is the displacement of this water particle during one cycle? So the answer of the displacement is being asked. So the displacement will be 0. Why? Because the initial and the final points are same in a complete cycle, therefore the displacement covered is 0.